The warning lights flashed red across the control room of the space station. Communications Officer Zethkar stared at his screen with 3 of his 4 eyes while the 4th watched the door. His supervisor would not be happy if he missed another important signal. The noise coming through the speakers sounded like static at first. Most signals from that part of space were just random noise from old stars dying or planets crashing into each other. But this one was different. The computer was trying to translate it into something that made sense. Zethkar pressed buttons on his control panel and waited. The translation software worked slowly with unknown languages. He had been doing this job for 12 years and had never seen a signal from the Sol system. That area of space was marked with red warnings in all. The star charts. Death World. Stay away. The screen finally showed words that made Zethkar's skin turn pale blue with worry. SOS, Earth Defense Command. Hostile fleet detected, requesting immediate assistance, coordinates attached. He read it 3 times to make sure he understood. Then he pressed the emergency button that would call Commander Velthos to the communications room. The commander arrived quickly, his tall frame filling the doorway. "What is the problem?" Commander Velthos asked. His voice was calm, but his eyes showed he was ready for bad news. "Sir, we have received a distress call from the Sol system," Zethkar said. He pointed at his screen. "From the Death World called Earth." Commander Velthos moved closer to look at the message. His face showed surprise and something that might have been fear. In all his years serving in the Valdrian Empire fleet, he had never heard of Deathworlders asking for help. They usually died fighting their problems or found ways to solve them that no civilized being would try. "Show me the full message," the commander said. Zethkar played the recording. A human voice spoke in their strange language. The translation came through a few seconds later. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Ship Defiant. We have detected a large enemy fleet moving toward our system. Count shows over 200 ships. They appear to be Zarathi collective vessels. We are requesting any available assistance. Our defense fleet numbers 47 ships. We will make our stand here regardless of response. Morrison out." The message repeated twice more, then stopped. Commander Velthos stood quiet for a long moment. The Zarathi collective had been growing larger and more dangerous for the past 50 years. They moved from system to system, taking everything useful and leaving dead rocks behind. Most civilized worlds surrendered when Zarathi ships appeared. Fighting them meant total destruction. But these humans were different. They lived on a planet that would kill most species in days. High gravity that would crush normal bones. An atmosphere filled with poison gases. Weather that could freeze or burn anything unlucky enough to be caught outside. And creatures that hunted each other for food instead of living in peace. The humans had somehow not only survived on this terrible world, but had built machines that could travel between stars. The Galactic Council had decided long ago to leave them alone. Let the Deathworlders stay on their death world where they belonged. "Sir, what should we do?" Zethkar asked. Commander Velthos thought about the choices. The Valdrian Empire had trade agreements with many peaceful worlds. If the Zarathi took the Sol system, they would have a base to attack this entire spiral arm of the galaxy. That would be bad for business and worse for the millions of beings who lived on the nearby worlds. But helping Deathworlders could be dangerous in ways no one could predict. Humans might see any ship that came to help as another enemy to fight. Or they might use tactics so violent that even friendly forces would be in danger. "Prepare 3 ships for jump to the Sol system," Commander Velthos said finally. "We will observe the situation." "Just observe, sir?" Zethkar asked. "Yes. We need to see what happens when Deathworlders face extinction. If the Zarathi win, we will report their position to the Council. If the humans win..." He paused. "If the humans win, we will need to rethink everything we know about warfare." Meanwhile, in the Sol system, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiant and watched the long-range sensors. The Zarathi fleet was still 3 days away, but he could already see how big it was. His tactical officer, Lisa Grant, sat at her station running numbers that all came out the same way. "Sir, even if every shot we fire hits perfectly, we do not have enough ammunition to stop them all," she said. Morrison nodded. He had expected this. Earth had been preparing for alien contact for decades, but they had always planned to meet traders or explorers, not a fleet of ships designed to destroy entire worlds. Any word from the other colonies, he asked. Mars base says they have 6 armed ships ready. The Jupiter mining station has 4 ships that can fight. That brings our total to 57 vessels, Grant said. In the ship's engine room, Pete Williams worked with his team to make changes to the reactor systems. They were following plans that had been marked as too dangerous to try under normal conditions. But normal conditions would not stop 200 enemy ships. If we run the reactor past the red line, how long before it explodes? Pete asked his assistant. Maybe 2 hours, maybe 5 minutes, no way to know for sure, came the answer. Pete smiled in a way that would have scared most civilized beings. Perfect. Make sure every ship in the fleet gets these modification plans. Earth Admiral Sam Rogers met with his staff in the deep bunkers under the capital city. The planet's defenses were designed to stop a few ships, not an entire fleet. But humans had been fighting impossible battles for thousands of years before they reached space. What about the civilian population? Asked Dr. Kate Sullivan, the science advisor. Evacuation ships are loading now, Admiral Rogers said. But we can maybe save 1 million people at most. Everyone else stays and fights. Dr. Sullivan pulled up displays showing Earth's secret weapons, things that had been built in case of the worst possible emergency, things that no other species would have thought to create. The volcanic detonation system is ready, she said. We can trigger eruptions along the entire Pacific Ring of Fire. The tectonic charges are placed at all major fault lines, and the atmospheric processors can release everything from our biological warfare stockpile. Admiral Rogers looked at the plans. Any one of these weapons would damage Earth so badly that it might never recover. Using all of them would make the planet nearly uninhabitable. How long before the planet could support life again? He asked. Conservative estimate? 200 years. Optimistic estimate? 50 years if we get help cleaning up afterward. The Admiral nodded. Better a dead world than a Zerathi world. Prepare everything. 3 days later, the enemy fleet arrived at the edge of the Sol system. The Valdrian observation ships watched from a safe distance as the Zerathi moved into attack formation. Commander Velthos had seen this pattern many times before. The aliens would destroy any defending ships, then move to the planet for bombardment and invasion. But as his sensors tracked the human ships, Commander Velthos saw something that made no sense. The Earth vessels were not forming defensive positions around their world. Instead, they were accelerating directly toward the much larger enemy fleet. Captain Morrison's voice came across all communication channels. All ships, this is Earth Defense Command. Today we find out what it costs to attack a death world. All ships, attack formation. Show them what humans do when cornered. Commander Velthos watched the sensor displays with growing amazement. The Deathworlders were not trying to win. They were trying to make their enemies pay the highest possible price for victory. It was a strategy no civilized species would consider. The battle for humanity's survival was about to begin. Commander Velthos watched his screens with 3 of his 4 eyes, while the 4th kept track of his crew's reactions. None of them had ever seen anything like what the humans were doing in the Sol system. The Earth ships moved in patterns that broke every rule of space combat. Normal fleet stayed in formation and used their longest-range weapons first. They tried to keep safe distances while wearing down enemy shields. The humans were doing the opposite of everything that made sense. Captain Morrison's ship, Defiant, led a group of 20 vessels straight at the center of the Zerathi formation. They were not firing their energy weapons. Instead, they launched everything else they had. Missiles, metal slugs, pieces of broken machinery, even chunks of rock picked up from asteroid belts. Why are they throwing garbage at the enemy? Asked Navigation Officer Kessitar from his station. Commander Velthos studied the tactical display. The human projectiles were moving at incredible speeds. When objects traveled that fast through space, even small pieces of metal could punch holes through ship armor. They are using their planet's gravity to accelerate everything they launch, he said. Those pieces of garbage are moving faster than most military missiles. The Zerathi fleet began firing back with their energy weapons. Bright beams of light reached across space toward the human ships. But the Earth vessels kept changing direction, in ways that should have torn them apart from the stress. On the Defiance bridge, Captain Morrison held tight to his command chair as the ship spun and twisted through the enemy fire. His pilot was a woman named Jenny Carter, who had learned to fly in Earth's thick atmosphere while dodging storms that could destroy mountains. "Carter, how much more of this can the ship take?" Morrison asked. "Sir, we passed the safe limits about 5 minutes ago," Carter replied. Her hands moved over the controls like she was playing music instead of flying a spaceship. "But the ship is still in one piece, so we keep going." Behind them, Engineer Pete Williams watched his instruments with the same expression other beings might use while watching their children play. The reactor was running so far past normal limits that the safety systems had given up and shut off their alarms. "Pete, how long until we blow up?" asked mechanic Tony Rodriguez. "Could be any second, could be another hour," Pete said with a smile. "Either way, it's going to be spectacular." The Valdrian observers watched as the human tactics became even stranger. When Zarathi ships damaged human vessels, the Earth crews did not retreat for repairs. Instead, each damaged ship would pick an enemy target and ram straight into it. A human cargo ship called Lucky Strike had lost its main engines and most of its weapons. Instead of surrendering, the crew aimed their crippled vessel at a Zarathi destroyer and fired every thruster they had left. The collision destroyed both ships in an explosion that lit up space for thousands of kilometers. "They are using their own ships as weapons," whispered Communications Officer Zethkar. Commander Velthos nodded slowly. He was beginning to understand why the Galactic Council had marked Earth as forbidden territory. It was not just because the planet was dangerous. It was because the people who lived there thought about danger in ways that normal minds could not process. While the space battle continued, the real surprise was happening on Earth itself. The Zarathi had sent landing forces to the planet's surface, expecting the usual pattern of conquest. Most civilized worlds would surrender once their space defenses were defeated. Dr. Kate Sullivan sat in her underground command center and watched displays showing Zarathi troop ships entering Earth's atmosphere. She had been waiting for this moment for months, while preparing weapons that no sane species would ever build. "All volcanic stations, this is Control," she said into her microphone. "Begin Sequence 1. Across the Pacific Ocean, charges that had been placed deep underground began to explode. Not the small explosions that humans used in mining, but massive detonations designed to crack the planet's crust. Volcanoes that had been sleeping for thousands of years suddenly came to life. The Zarathi landing ships found themselves flying through clouds of burning ash and poisonous gas. Their sensors, designed to work in the clean vacuum of space, could not see through the thick smoke. Ships crashed into mountains they never saw coming, but Dr. Sullivan was just getting started. She activated the tectonic charges next. Colonel Ryan Hayes led ground forces from bunkers built deep enough to survive earthquakes. As the planet shook, around them he spoke to his troops through radio systems hardened against every disaster Earth could produce. "Remember, people, we are not trying to win pretty," he said. "We are trying to make sure they never want to come back." The human soldiers had spent years training for this kind of fight. Not the clean battles that civilized armies fought, but the messy, desperate combat that happened when everything went wrong at once. When Zarathi troops landed in the middle of what had been New York City, they found empty streets filled with traps. Buildings had been rigged to collapse at the push of a button. The subway tunnels were flooded with everything from explosive gas to engineered diseases that would kill any non-human life form. The aliens were used to fighting enemies who valued their own lives and property. They had never faced an opponent who would destroy their own cities rather than let them be captured. Mayor Linda Parker coordinated the civilian resistance from her emergency bunker. She had been a schoolteacher before the war, but now she was giving orders that would have horrified military commanders from any civilized world. "Sector 7, detonate the hospital," she said calmly. "Sector 12, release the biological agents in the water system. Sector 15, collapse the interstate highways." Each order meant destroying something that had taken years to build. But humans had been building things just to tear them down again for as long as they had existed. They were used to starting over. In space, the battle was reaching a point that confused the Valdrian observers even more. The human fleet was losing ships at a terrible rate, but somehow they were still fighting. Every time a ship was destroyed, the remaining vessels seemed to get more dangerous instead of less. Captain Morrison's Defiant had been hit so many times that half the ship was open to space. Most of his crew was working in pressure suits because the life support systems had failed. But instead of retreating, Morrison ordered his ship closer to the enemy. "Sir, we have lost main weapons, navigation, and communications," reported Tactical Officer Lisa Grant. "Also, the reactor is about to explode." "How long?" Morrison asked. "Maybe 10 minutes. Morrison looked at the tactical display showing a Zarathi command ship just ahead of them. "Perfect. That gives us just enough time to ram that big one over there." Pilot Jenny Carter laughed as she aimed their dying ship at the enemy vessel. "Sir, I always wanted to try this maneuver, just never thought I would live through it." "Who says you're going to live through it now?" Morrison replied. The Valdrian observers watched as the Defiant accelerated toward the Zarathi flagship. At the last second, Pete Williams activated the reactor overload. The explosion did not just destroy both ships, it created a chain reaction that damaged 6 other enemy vessels. But what amazed Commander Velthos most was what happened next. A new voice came over the human communication channels. It was Admiral Sam Rogers, speaking from Earth. "All remaining ships, this is Admiral Rogers. Captain Morrison has shown us the way. All ships with damaged reactors, pick your targets. All ships with working reactors, get them damaged first, then pick your targets." The Valdrian commander realized he was watching something that had never happened before in galactic history. The humans were not just willing to die for their cause, they were turning their own deaths into weapons. On Earth, Dr. Kate Sullivan prepared to activate her final contingency plan, the one that would make the planet uninhabitable for centuries, but would guarantee that the Zarathi could never use it as a base for further conquest. "All stations prepare for atmospheric release," she announced. "If we cannot keep our world, we will make sure no one else can have it either." Commander Velthos made a decision that would change his life forever. He opened a communication channel to the human fleet. "Admiral Rogers, this is Commander Velthos of the Valdrian Empire. We are prepared to offer assistance." The reply came back immediately. "Commander, this is Admiral Rogers. Are you sure you want to get involved in this? We fight dirty." "Admiral, after watching your fleet for the past 4 hours, I think my people need to learn what fighting dirty really means." Commander Velthos watched his tactical display as his 3 ships moved closer to the battle. What he saw made him question everything he knew about warfare. The humans were not losing, they were winning, and they were doing it in ways that would give his military academy instructors nightmares. The Zarathi fleet had started with 200 ships. Now they had less than 150. But the human losses were even worse. Of their original 57 vessels, only 23 were still fighting. The difference was that each human ship destroyed was taking multiple enemy vessels with it. "Sir, the humans are requesting we target their damaged reactor cores with our weapons," reported his tactical officer. Commander Velthos stared at the message. "They want us to shoot them?" "Yes, sir. They say it will make the explosions bigger when they ram enemy ships." The Valdrian commander had been in the military for 30 years. He had fought pirates, rebels, and invasion fleets, but he had never been asked to kill his own allies to make them more effective weapons. "Do it," he ordered. "If we are going to fight alongside Deathworlders, we might as well learn to think like them." The Valdrian ships began targeting human vessels that were already damaged beyond repair. Their energy weapons caused the Earth ship's reactors to overload in controlled explosions that turned each vessel into a massive bomb. The human crews rode these flying bombs straight into Zarathi formations. Pilot Jenny Carter had somehow survived the destruction of 3 different ships. Each time her vessel was destroyed, she had managed to escape in a life pod and get picked up by another human ship. Now she was flying a captured Zarathi fighter that she had somehow figured out how to operate. "This is Carter to all human ships," her voice came over the radio. "The alien controls are pretty simple once you get used to them. The red button makes things explode, the blue button makes you go faster, and the green button opens doors. Everything else is just for show." Carter's simple explanation was helping other human crews who had boarded damaged Zarathi vessels. While civilized species spent years learning to operate alien technology, the humans were figuring it out in minutes and using it in ways the original designers never intended. Engineer Pete Williams had transferred to a Zarathi cruiser after his ship was destroyed. He was now in the enemy engine room with a cutting torch, making modifications that would have terrified any sane engineer. "Tony, hand me that alien power coupling," he called to mechanic Tony Rodriguez, who had also survived multiple ship destructions. "Pete, are you sure about this?" Tony asked. "The alien computer is saying we have about 30 seconds before this whole section explodes." "Perfect timing," Pete replied. "That gives us just enough time to aim this thing at their flagship." Two humans finished their work and ran for the escape pods just as their captured ship accelerated toward the largest Zarathi vessel. The explosion when it hit was visible from 3 star systems away. On Earth, the ground battle had become something that would be studied in military schools for centuries. The Zarathi troops were experienced fighters who had conquered dozens of worlds, but they had never fought an enemy that used their own planet as a weapon. Colonel Ryan Hayes led his forces through tunnels that connected every major city on Earth. These passages had been built in secret over decades, designed to let human forces move around their planet, even while the surface was uninhabitable. "Squad leaders, remember the plan," he said into his radio. "Let them take the cities. Then we collapse the cities on top of them." The Zarathi had captured New York, London, Tokyo, and a dozen other major population centers. They thought they were winning. Then Dr. Kate Sullivan activated the urban destruction protocols. Every major building in every captured city had been rigged with explosives years before the invasion began. Not small charges meant to damage enemy troops, but massive bombs designed to bring down entire city blocks. The humans had spent more time preparing to destroy their own civilization than most species spent building theirs. Mayor Linda Parker watched from her bunker as the city she had governed for 8 years disappeared in a series of explosions that could be seen from orbit. She felt sad for about 10 seconds. Then she started planning how to rebuild it better after the war was over. "All civilian resistance cells, this is Mayor Parker," she announced. "Phase 1 is complete. Begin Phase 2. Release everything we prepared in the sewers." The humans had spent months introducing Earth's most dangerous diseases and toxins into their own water systems. Not enough to hurt humans who had lived with these dangers for thousands of years, but more than enough to kill any alien life forms that tried to use Earth's resources. The Zarathi troops that survived the collapsing cities found themselves facing biological warfare agents that had evolved on a world where everything was trying to kill everything else. Within hours, their invasion force was dying from diseases that Earth children caught and recovered from every year. In space, the tide of battle was turning in ways that amazed the Valdrian observers. The human fleet was down to just 15 ships, but the Zarathi were panicking. They had never faced an enemy that became more dangerous as they got weaker. Admiral Sam Rogers commanded the defense from his flagship Resolute, which had been hit so many times that it looked more like a piece of space debris than a warship. But somehow it was still fighting. "All ships, this is Admiral Rogers," he broadcast. "The enemy is breaking formation. They are trying to retreat. Do not let them leave our system alive." The remaining human ships pursued the fleeing Zarathi with the determination of predators chasing wounded prey. They had no intention of letting any of the invaders escape to tell others about human weaknesses. Captain Jake Morrison had somehow survived the destruction of the Defiant by transferring to another ship, then another, then another. He was now commanding a vessel that was half human technology and half captured Zarathi equipment. The combination should not have worked, but humans had never let impossibilities stop them before. "Morrison to all ships," he called. "The big one in the center is their command vessel. If we take it out, the rest might surrender." "Captain, they outnumber us 10 to 1, replied one of his officers. "Good," Morrison said. "That means we only have to kill 10 times our weight in enemies. We have done worse odds before." The human ships converged on the Zarathi flagship, like sharks attacking a whale. They did not use proper military formations or coordinated battle plans. They just attacked from every direction at once, each ship trying to do as much damage as possible before being destroyed. Commander Velthos ordered his Valdrian ships to support the human attack. His energy weapons were more advanced than human technology, but he found himself learning tactics from beings his people considered primitive. All Valdrian vessels target the enemy ship's weak points, he ordered. And remember, if our ships get damaged, we ram them into something important before they explode. His crew looked at him with surprise. Ramming was not a tactic taught in Valdrian military schools. Sir, that is not standard procedure, his tactical officer pointed out. Nothing about this battle is standard procedure, Commander Velthos replied. We are fighting alongside Deathworlders now. We do things their way or we lose. The combined human and Valdrian attack overwhelmed the Zarathi flagship's defenses. As the massive ship began to break apart, escape pods launched in all directions, but the humans were not interested in taking prisoners. All ships target those escape pods, Admiral Rogers ordered. We cannot let any of them report back to their fleet. Commander Velthos hesitated. Attacking escape pods was against every rule of civilized warfare, but then he remembered what the Zarathi had planned to do to Earth and its billions of inhabitants. Valdrian ships, you heard the Admiral, he said. Target all escape pods. No survivors. As the last Zarathi ship exploded, Admiral Rogers opened a communication channel to Commander Velthos. Commander, thank you for your help. We could not have won without you. Admiral, I think my people have much to learn from yours, Velthos replied. Perhaps we can discuss an alliance. Commander, after what we just did together, I think we already have one. The battle for Earth was over, but the war for the galaxy was just beginning. The silence after the last explosion felt strange to everyone who had survived the battle. For 3 days, space around Earth had been filled with weapon fire, explosions, and radio chatter. Now there was only the quiet hum of damaged ships and the slow movement of debris floating through space. Admiral Sam Rogers sat in his command chair aboard the Resolute and looked at the damage reports. Of Earth's 57 defending ships, only 8 were still able to fly. The planet below had lost 6 major cities and millions of people. The oceans were boiling with volcanic activity, and half the continents were shaking from earthquakes that humans had triggered themselves. But they had won. The Zarathi invasion fleet was completely destroyed. Not a single enemy ship had escaped to tell their leaders what had happened in the Sol system. Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the Valdrian commander, reported the communications officer. Put him through, Rogers said. Commander Velthos appeared on the main screen. His ship looked almost as damaged as the human vessels. Fighting alongside Deathworlders had taught the Valdrians some hard lessons about what real warfare looked like. Admiral Rogers, my government is asking for a full report on what happened here, Velthos said. I am not sure how to explain what I have witnessed. Admiral Rogers understood the problem. How do you tell civilized people that you just watched a species destroy half their own planet to stop an invasion? How do you explain that the defenders turned their own deaths into weapons? Commander, tell them the truth, Rogers said. Tell them that Earth is still here because we were willing to lose everything to keep it. My people will find that difficult to believe. Your people have never lived on a world that tries to kill them every day, Rogers replied. We learned a long time ago that survival means being willing to pay any price necessary. On Earth, the cleanup was already beginning. Dr. Kate Sullivan emerged from her underground bunker to find a world that looked like it had been hit by every natural disaster at once. Cities were in ruins. Volcanoes were still erupting. The air was thick with ash and smoke that would take years to clear. But humans were already making plans to rebuild. Mayor Linda Parker stood in what had been New York City and talked to engineers about where to put the new buildings. Colonel Ryan Hayes was organizing his troops to help with rescue operations instead of military attacks. How long before the planet is livable again? Dr. Sullivan asked the environmental teams. The volcanic activity should calm down in 6 months, one scientist reported. The earthquakes will continue for maybe 2 years. The atmospheric contamination will take 5 to 10 years to clear completely. Dr. Sullivan nodded. These were better numbers than she had expected. Humans were used to rebuilding after disasters. They had been doing it for thousands of years. Meanwhile, Captain Jake Morrison was leading salvage operations in space. His current ship was a mixture of human and Zarathi technology, that should not have been able to fly. But engineer Pete Williams had made it work by ignoring every rule of safe engineering. "Pete, how much alien technology can we actually use?" Morrison asked. "Most of it is pretty simple once you figure out their approach," Pete replied. "Their ships are built for safety and efficiency. Ours are built to keep fighting even when everything goes wrong. If we combine both approaches, we might end up with something really interesting." Mechanic Tony Rodriguez was already working on plans for new ships that would use the best features of both human and Zerathi designs. The result would be vessels that could survive damage that would destroy any existing ship, while carrying weapons that could threaten entire fleets. Pilot Jenny Carter was test flying one of the captured Zerathi fighters. She had modified it with human controls and weapon systems. The combination made it faster and more maneuverable than anything either species had built before. "Carter to Control Tower," she radioed. "This alien ship flies like a dream once you remove all the safety systems." The news of Earth's victory spread through the galaxy faster than anyone expected. Commander Velthos had sent his report to the Valdrian government, but other species had detected the energy signatures from the battle. Within days, representatives from dozens of worlds were asking for more information. The Galactic Council called an emergency session to discuss what had happened in the Sol system. For the first time in history, they invited a human representative to speak before the assembled delegates. Admiral Rogers arrived at the council station aboard a ship that made the alien delegates nervous just by looking at it. The vessel was obviously built for war, with weapons visible on every surface and armor that showed recent battle damage. "Admiral Rogers of Earth Defense Command," announced the council speaker. "You are here to explain how your species defeated a Zerathi invasion fleet that outnumbered you 4-1. Rogers stood before hundreds of alien representatives from across the galaxy. Most of them had never seen a human before. They studied him with the same fascination they might show for a dangerous predator that had learned to speak. "Honored delegates," Rogers began. "My people survived because we were willing to do what civilized species would not consider. We destroyed our own cities. We poisoned our own planet. We turned our deaths into weapons. We fought like cornered animals because that is exactly what we were." A delegate from the peaceful Zentari Republic raised a tentacle. "Admiral, are you saying your species would rather die than surrender?" Delegate: "My species would rather make the enemy wish they had never been born than surrender," Rogers replied. "There is a difference." The council chamber fell silent. Several delegates looked like they wanted to leave the room. The council speaker spoke carefully. "Admiral, what does your government want from the Galactic Council?" "We want trade agreements. We want cultural exchange programs. We want to share our technology and learn from yours," Rogers said. "But most importantly, we want everyone to understand that Earth is under the protection of species that will burn down the galaxy before we let anyone threaten our friends." Commander Velthos stood from his seat. "Honored delegates, I fought alongside the humans. I have seen what they can do when they are desperate. I recommend that we accept their offer of friendship, because the alternative is unthinkable." Over the next several months, everything changed. Human ships began patrolling the trade routes that had been threatened by Zerathi expansion. Pirates and raiders discovered that attacking vessels under human protection was the fastest way to die in the galaxy. But humans also brought other changes. Human doctors shared medical techniques that saved lives on worlds where healing had been impossible before. Human engineers designed ships and stations that could survive disasters that would have destroyed everything built by civilized species. Most importantly, humans shared their most valuable skill: the ability to survive when everything went wrong. Dr. Amy Torres established medical schools on 12 different worlds, teaching alien doctors how to treat injuries and diseases that had been considered fatal before. Her techniques were based on knowledge gained from living on a planet where everything was dangerous. Engineer Pete Williams worked with alien scientists to design new technologies that combined the best of human and alien engineering. The results were ships that could explore regions of space that had been too dangerous to visit before. Earth became the unofficial military headquarters for an alliance of species that had never considered working together before. Humans provided the military backbone while their alien allies contributed advanced technology and resources. Commander Velthos was promoted to admiral and placed in charge of the new combined fleet. He had learned to think like a human when necessary, but he also taught humans how to use more advanced alien technology effectively. "Admiral Rogers," he said during one of their planning meetings, "my people used to think that war was a failure of diplomacy. Now we understand that sometimes diplomacy is what happens after you win the war." Rogers smiled. "Admiral Velthos, welcome to the human way of thinking. We have been waiting for the rest of the galaxy to catch up." The Zarathi Collective never attacked another human world. In fact, they never attacked any world protected by the new alliance. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Deathworlders make very good friends and very bad enemies. Earth was rebuilt within 5 years, better and stronger than before. The new cities were designed to survive attacks that would destroy most civilized worlds. The new orbital defenses could stop fleets 10 times larger than the one that had originally threatened the planet. But the most important change was that humans were no longer alone in the galaxy. They had allies who understood that sometimes survival required doing terrible things to terrible people. And when the next threat appeared from the dark spaces between stars, it would face not just one death world, but an entire alliance of species that had learned to fight like Deathworlders when necessary. The galaxy was a much safer place for civilized beings, and a much more dangerous place for anyone who threatened them.